a farmer, had a dog, and Bingo was his name. Oh, I-N-G-O, 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 and Bingo was his name. Oh.
Junior Primary Channel for interview. Welcome back to Junior Primary Channel for interview. So we are just continuing with the types of the groups. Okay, we are continuing with the types of the groups. Okay, when we are talking about types of the group, we are talking about the types of the group that the teacher will organize or will form up where in his or her classrooms. Okay, let's have a look. It says what? The teacher should never refer to quick or to slow learners or bright or dull learners. So you must note when you are forming up your groups, you must avoid labeling that particular group according to learners' intellectual capacity. You cannot group a group. You cannot name a group according to learners' capacity. For example, you label that is a dull group, or that is a group for dull learners, or that is a group for slow learners. No, you can name your groups using even names, names of the plants, maybe names of the animal, tiger, lion, giraffe group, or you can use the names of colors, red, yellow, green, and so on. You should never ever label group learners according to their intellectual capacity. Okay, so and then those names of the names of the groups, you need to change them accordingly. According to what? According to the themes, according to the topics you are teaching. If you are dealing with plants, make sure that the names of the groups are plant names. Okay, or if you are dealing with animals, make sure that the names of the groups will be animals names. Okay, so let's have a group. So we only have three types of groups. We only have three types of group. So it's now up to you to choose which one is preferable to your classroom, which one you prefer to use in your classroom. You only have three types of what? Groups. Okay, in learner-centered education. Okay, number one is a social group. Okay, number two is a mixed ability group. Okay, and then the last one is a what? Ability group. We only have three types of groups. When we are grouping learners, we are grouping them according to three types of group. Okay, number one is a social group, number two is a mixed ability group, and then number three, the last one, is an ability group. So let's have a look in them. So what do they mean, or how can you tell that this is a social group, or this is a mixed ability group, or this is a ability group? So we are starting with a social group. This is when you divide the class into groups of about 6 learners. You divide the class into groups of 6 what? 6 learners by putting the desk together. You're putting the desk together, maybe 3 to the other side and 3 on the other side. Okay, groups like this might be used when you do not have enough of the same materials for the whole class. You can use a social group when you don't have enough resources, enough materials of the same what maybe task. Okay, so every group will be doing something different. Yes, due to the lack of resources, due to the lack of materials, which is not even yet which is not even recommended to lack materials in your classroom. Okay, let's have a look. So it says what? So every group will be doing something different in social group. Okay, it make it easier for the teacher to help each group. Okay, then we are moving to the mixed ability group. Mixed ability group. The word mixed, then ability. Okay, mixed ability groups. Okay, so this is when you as a teacher, you have the fast and the slower learners in the same group. You mix the slower and the fast learners in the same group. Okay, you may want to use this type of a grouping when you want the fast learners to help the slower learners. So this is the type of group, the mixed ability grouping method or way. You can use it when you want to mix the fast learners and the slower learners, with the aim of the fast learners to teach what? To teach the slower learners. And remember, this is called what? Peer tutoring or peer teaching. Okay, when learners are teaching each other. The fast teaching, the slower what? Learners, okay? This helps the slower learners to understand some concepts. It's helped the slower learners to understand some of the concepts. And remember, learners often learn better from others, so they prefer much to learn better from their peers, okay? And it helps the explainer, the peer now, who is explaining to others, who is teaching the others. It helps the fast learners to do what? To understand even better by explaining it to others more and more, okay? But be sure that the fast learners are not doing all the work. You need to control the peer teaching, okay? Then we move to the ability group, ability group, okay? This is when you group together learners according to their ability in the subject. The ability group, you group learners according to their what? To their ability, okay? So for example, in mathematics or maybe in reading, you would put the fast learners together. You put the fast learners together, or the middle learners together, or even the slower learners together. The aim is to do what? To challenge them. Learners can then progress at their own speed. Learners can also progress at their own speed. The fast learners will have more challenging and enriching work. When you are grouping your learners according to their ability, make sure that the activity that you are giving them is of their intellectual ability, is of their learning ability. For the fast learners, make sure that you give them some challenging questions, some enriching works. And then for the middle and the slower learners, make sure that you give activities of their average in learning. Make sure that it will help you as a teacher to focus on the slower learners easily. When you give fast learners the challenging questions with the slower learners, okay? And then the teachers should, when you are forming these types of groups, when you are forming the social group, the mixed ability group, and then the ability groups, you need to consider some of the things. What are those things that you need to consider? You need to consider the number of learners in each group, the materials and the resources that will cater or will fit in that specific type of a group, okay? And then if you look in the National Policy Guide for Junior Primary Subjects, or if you go and check or familiar yourself with page 12, so there's a table there that will guide you in setting up those type of group, okay? Then you move to the procedures for designing a group activity. There are things to follow, there are procedures to follow when you are designing a group activity. When you are giving an activity to a group, you need to consider or you need to follow some of the procedures. So let's have a look at them, okay? When designing a group activities, you should ask yourself the following questions. So these are not really procedures, but they're just questions that you need to interview yourself before giving an activity to the group, okay? These are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself as a teacher, okay? In learner-centered education, when you are forming up a group, okay? Or when you are giving a group activity, okay? One of the questions you should ask yourself that, what are the learning objectives for this exercise? What are the learning objectives? You know that objectives, those are the outcomes, what you expected your learners to know after. Okay? The next question is, should I use a group or why? Okay? This is the question that, should you use a group or, and the reason why you should use a group. Okay? Then the next question is, what kind of a group should you use? What kind of a group should you use? Remember the three types of group. We have the social group, the mixed ability, and the ability group. So which one will you go for? Okay. And then is there a group goal? So a group goal. Okay. And then the next one is saying, what materials are needed for the group to do that? What type of the materials are required in that specific what type of a group? Okay. What instruction will you give to the group? Okay, what type of instruction will you give? Okay, what will you do while the group is working? Okay, what will you do as a teacher now? So you give the activities now to the learners. What will you do? Maybe you will lead the discussions, you will monitor all learners, you will observe learners if they are all taking part in group activities. Okay, and then what will What activity can you use to complete the exercise? The type of activity that you can use to complete the exercise. Okay. What reward can you give the group to work? A group that work effectively. What reward that can you give to the group that work or that did very well, very effectively? How can or what rewards can you offer to that specific group? How will you measure group success? How can you measure the group success? How will you measure the group success? And then the last one, what did you learn as a teacher during the group exercise, and what you would use next time? So what you learn, was the group successful, or were they some of the things that you need to use next time, or things to change? What did you learn as a teacher during the group exercise? So those were some of the procedures when you are designing a group activity, things to follow, things to guide you when you are designing a group activity. So we are moving on. This is the group work process. The process now of a group work. Okay. There are three things that you need to consider under group work process. Okay. One of it is setting up the group. When you are setting up the group, okay. Number two, designing activities for the group learning. Right? When you are designing an activity for group learning. And then the third one, teacher's role while learners do group activities. So there are three things that you need to consider under the group work process. Okay. The first one, setting up groups. Okay, when you're setting up the group, there are things that you need to consider uh, under setting up the group. You need to consider the number of learners. Okay, the number of learners, and then the selection. How going to select them? How going to cater now a type of group? Are you going to use social group, grouping, mixed ability, or ability group? Okay, then you move to designing activity for group learning. Okay, how going to the designing activity for group learning? Okay, whereby you have to focus on the objectives that will be achieved from that type of at the end of that activity in a specific group, the type of the group that you're going to use, the materials needed, the instruction that you need to give to your learners, your teacher's role, the teacher's role, what will be your role now? Okay, and the closing activity, the rewards that you are going to give to your learners, and then the assessment, how going to assess the activity, the reflection, how going to reflect to that specific exercise. Okay, then you move to the teacher's role while learners do the activity. What will you do while the learners are busy doing an activity? Okay, you need to give instruction. Just number one, you need to provide the group rules and roles. Okay, you need to do what? To give group rules and roles. Okay, you need to assist learners. Okay, you need to assist the learners. Okay, and then you need to lead the discussion. You need to lead the discussion. Remember, you are the leader, so lead those discussions per each group. Okay, and then you need to give rewards and prizes. Remember, the group that did well, prize it, so you can encourage other group also to do well, to be um, praised or to be rewarded. Okay, then you move to the rules of the group teaching. There are some of the rules when you are teaching the group. You need to follow some of the rules when you are teaching the groups. Okay, one, it says what? It is essential. Something essential is something important. Okay, it is essential to have the sufficient occupational materials. Make sure that we have the sufficient occupational material for use by individual learners, so that all may be kept active and interested throughout the lesson. Make sure that you have the materials that of individuals learners' interests that will make them interested and active throughout the lesson. Okay, there should be enough material available for every member of that group, which is required to use that particular material during a lesson. You make sure that every learner, every individual has the correct and enough materials. Make sure that there is enough sufficient materials, okay, for every member of that specific group. Okay, it is most important that the teacher should spend some time teaching the learners how to use each piece of material or work card. You need to make sure that you explain how those materials, how to use those materials. Don't just give the materials and then sometimes the learners don't even know how to use the make